And good evening, Tampa Bay. You are watching Tampa Bay Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. Myself, Captain Travis Yaeckel. This guy may look familiar. Been a while.
I don't even know who I am.
Captain Danny Garino made it in with us tonight. Talk a little fishing. And as always, Captain Jason Prieto. And
what's going on?
You guys got us for another hour. So we're here to talk some fishing, talk whatever you guys want to talk about. We're going to do some boating safety.
That's our topic. We're going to talk fishing.
Tonight.
We're going to talk, everybody knows in the fishing community it was a sad day, and it got a little bit worse for me yesterday. I got a call, some gentlemen. There was a boat crash in the Little Manatee, which is literally minutes from our houses, all three of us, and gentleman died on the water. I got called to help. Jason Thompson helped. Joel helped. Todd Fouché helped. There's a lot of people involved. There was a little bit of an instance from the tides and how the river falls that we couldn't get on the water. But found out yesterday it's a real good customer of mine that died, one of the guys in the accident, and actually had me booked next month. So it's a real sad story. Got a little bit worse for me because he'd been booking me for years. But anyhow, we're going to talk some boating safety. And sometimes this stuff might seem boring, but I can tell you, I learned a lot of pointless stuff in my captain's class. There's a few things that stuck that I think would save your life. Simple stuff. Some of the easiest stuff but people I've seen do over the years on and Danny, I know you have too, that could just somebody mention it to you and it sticks in your head, it could save your life. So we're going to talk a little boat and safety. We're going to do some trivias. Blue Water Gear is going to give away a shirt. We're going to give away a chum bat. And we're going to talk fishing too. We're going to let you guys know a fishing report. It's been great. Fishing's been good. I'm going to go out, not going to go on that limb and say trout fishing's been good, but we've been catching quite a bit of trout last few weeks.
Speak for yourself. I'm not catching a lot.
Well, that's my point and that's why I won't say it's good, because I don't want to paint that picture. But it's been fishing's been good though. We're full-fledged spring. I guess we actually have a cold front coming through, which I can tell you, I got off a plane February 5th, Tuesday, and it hadn't been 60 degrees since I got off that plane on February 5th. And we've had very few super windy days to where we've had some, mild winds for March, typical, but not.
We've had record heat.
Yeah, this
period.
is crazy.
It's just been hot. It's fired off the spring fishing a few weeks early, and everything's been real good as far as the fishing world's concerned. I mean, for me, honestly, the trout bite's been really good. We've got on some good numbers of trout. They've only been in a handful of areas, but we have been doing pretty well on the trout. The snook bite has just been
the snook bite's
typical.
Crazy.
It's just
been crazy.
They're starting to make their way out of the river systems and getting in the back country and some of their springtime haunts, and the fishing's really, I don't know, I'm hoping that it's not at its peak. Kind of scary because we all book up in April for some snook trips, and we've been sort of doing that same type of fishing in the last 2 weeks. So hopefully they don't get beat up too bad to where our
fishing snook
April,
like I have been, like it is April.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's what we're doing.
I mean, it's been that good. So hopefully it continues, and it should. We still haven't seen. I've heard different places getting some bait moving in on the flats, but I don't think we're in a full, catching bait on the flats type mode. I think there's a handful of areas that do have some bait showing up, especially the high flow areas. But other than that, I've still been getting it deep on the channel markers. If I can't find on the channel markers, I am going to the bridge. But
the
last week and a half, it's been at the markers.
There's two guys that find bait on the flats before anybody. One of them's on his way back from Arkansas picking his boat up, and the other one's in the studio. Captain Danny.
Yeah.
Danny thrives on flats bait, man.
Oh,
and you always find it, I depend on you to tell me when it's on the flats.
Well, I saw bait on the South Shore last week.
Yeah.
It wasn't real big. It was, and it probably wouldn't be worth going after because it wasn't that thick. But I did see some bait there.
Well, depending on where you at, it could have been from about the 20 fishing guides that have been chumming.
It could have been.
Cockroach bait.
It could have
been.
But
no, there is some bait. I've been seeing some bait too.
No, I've been seeing the birds diving on them, and there's some
A lot of glass minnows.
There's a
though,
lot
too.
of glass
I was
minnows.
gonna say there's a lot of glass
but
minnows.
in that mix of glass minnows, and I saw some white bait.
There is some. The further south you go is where I've seen a little bit more bait. We've been doing some trout fishing on some heavy grass flats, and during that, moving spot to spot, I've been seeing white bait. No big, schools of bait, but there have been, smaller patches of bait as you're going across. And to be honest with you, there could be more than what I'm seeing. You may be able to sit there and chum, early in the morning and get
It's
get it
too
to
early.
stack up, but-
Normally you don't go until mid March. Then you start seeing it, but we started seeing it last week, so it's about 3 weeks early.
Yeah.
So I'll check some spots next week. Some of my St. Pete spots are really good, and
Hopefully.
with the water temperature at 74 degrees, there should be no reason that bait's not there.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I mean, for me, the point at which I really start going to the flats to catch bait is when the markers get tough, and I've just had enough of the early morning wind. It's coming. April's coming, and it starts to get real windy, and so that's the turning point for me, is when it's just too bad to go out to the markers to get it. Me personally, I just hate the grass. I hate the grass, man.
No, you're forgetting one
grass.
key element. You're forgetting one key element to
What's that?
markers. Sardines.
The Spanish sardines will find me, or I find them, one or the other. But it definitely happens at least
that
once
is
a year.
your signature.
You know
You
why?
ain't lying,
you know why I
dude.
like catching it on the flats? I don't have a crowd.
Have you ever
Yeah.
hung a net on the flats?
No.
The thing about the markers, it's either great or horrible. Because if you get it in 2 throws, you fill 5 wells up. But after that, it's horrible because you either had to throw the net 20 times, you either hung your net, or you're not getting it. There's 20 boats motoring around you while you're getting a little bit. And the whole time you're throwing an extra heavy net. We're typically throwing an extra heavy humpback that's 11 to 12 foot. And about 4 throws into it, I think all of us will agree we're about over throwing the 12
What's up,
footer.
Travis? Good to see you, brother.
And,
it was nice meeting you the other day, man.
So the markers, man, when it's good, it's good. But when you're out there in 3-footers taking them over the bow, it's downright dangerous. It really is.
It is. And to follow the tune of some of what our topic tonight is with safety, and we had them on the show the other night, was those safety packs, the waist packs, the inflatable life jackets that you strap around your waist. I got those, I don't know, started wearing about 2 years ago. And the reason why I actually broke down and bought one of those packs was for this time of year in the wintertime, but mainly for this time of year is when it happened to me, where I went out there early one morning before the sun got up, rough morning, and I went to throw the net. There was nobody else out on any of the markers that I could see anywhere. I go to throw the net, and when I do, I kind of lost my footing. And I didn't fall off, but it was like that clutch moment where I knew that if I would have slipped in and fell, I kind of looked around and I was like, what would I have done? Makes you think, you know what I mean? And that night I went home and I ordered 2 of those waist packs. And to this day, I keep one in the boat, and I actually have 3 of them. I kept 2 for tournament, and I got 1 in my boat. And I'll put that joker on when I'm out there catching bait by myself, and it's gnarly. It's rough, because
That's another reason.
that could be the only shot you get.
Another reason to go to the flats.
You've got you've got your extra tough boots on. You've got your bibs on with a jacket most of the time if it's nasty, and
You're basically going to be like a water balloon
exactly
flowing up if you
one
fall in
slip
the
and
water.
fall. I mean, yeah, you could probably stroke it over to another marker, but if it's ripping and honking, chances of being able to do that is tough, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's downright scary out there at
But if I
times, man.
fall,
It
you
got
know what?
me
If
on
I
that
fall
one.
in the water on the flats, I just stand up.
Yeah,
Well, and there's no doubt about it. As we get
I fall in
older,
the water on the flats all the time.
as we get older, you get a little less agile and a little less your
Well, I
balance.
can't get much older.
And the flip side to that too is,
So
Jason,
Danny, tell
is,
how it is to be
is
old.
the more you're on the boat, the more comfortable you feel with it, right? So, especially for me, I know with me, when I first got on the Canyon Bay and started fishing out of it, I kind of tiptoed around. You're really being cautious of where you're at walking around. And nowadays, you kind of get the feel. It's just like you, I'm sure, with the
Yeah.
Pathfinder, where you kind of learn the little creeks and creeks and where you're at on your boat. And sometimes you can take that for granted and walk right off the back of the boat or the side of the boat. And in rough weather, it's even worse. So something to consider. But Travis Rudder, we ran into Travis the other day when we had that group trip. Rick and I went out to catch bait, and we ran into these guys on the channel marker.
Oh, okay.
And real nice guys. I hope they tore the fish up. We had a great day that day. We got a couple limits of trout, piles of snook, and some redfish. So it was a good day. I hope you guys had the same outcome on that. But
Yeah, that was one of them trips that, honestly, financially it backfired on us. We caught too many fish too early, and they're like,
yeah, it was
an open
it
hour.
was a 4 to 6, and by 2.5 hours, man,
Everybody
like,
had just.
we had our limits, and
We're like, I
the
think
meat
we're
trip
good.
guys were kind of like, snook are fun, but if we
I
can't
was
eat 'em,
okay.
we don't want nothing to do with them.
I was okay
But,
with that because we went and got bait. Well, I went and got bait super early. Came back, went to my daughter's soccer game. Came back out to fish. It wasn't like running a double, but it kind of was.
Those afternoon trips can catch up with you.
Yeah,
you know
I
what
mean, if you wake up early and get bait, and I like fishing afternoons.
I do. I love it.
A little bit more. Besides the wind, the wind's always a factor because you get the afternoon sea breeze that kicks up. But on the weekends, it's a catch-22 for me because I like to get home early and spend the weekend days with my daughters. But then also the weekends, like if you fish the later part of the day,
Yes.
that morning crowd cleans out.
Yeah, people go home.
Yeah, they do. It's a difference. So maybe one day I can start taking weekends
People
off.
always ask me if I fish on football Sundays when football season.
Yeah.
I said, absolutely. I said, but if you want to pick up at around 1 o'clock, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Because come that 2 or 3 o'clock sweet spot, especially if you've got a good tide, you can make some stuff happen in that later part of the day, especially in the warmer parts of the day or even in the colder times of the year. That middle part of the day sometimes can produce a little bit better. And then obviously with your tide. Here over the last, I'd say, 2 weeks, that afternoon tide has been a lot better than the morning bite. I mean, we've been catching fish on the lower water in the morning, but where we've been going and catching fish, it seems like that afternoon bite's been better, partly because of that tide getting in. And what I've noticed is we've had some really weak quarter moon tides up until now. We're coming up on a full moon, but the wind that we've had really didn't let the tide start moving until noon, 1 o'clock, when it was supposed to turn at like 10:30. So some of that type of stuff has been something that we've been considering. At least I have on some of my trips, at least the half-day trips, fishing quite a few more afternoons than the mornings. But that'll all change in the next couple of weeks. I think we'll start having some higher water in the morning, and then getting out there early and getting it done, man. So
Danny,
I'll start beating the heat.
You're our guest today. This is a weird spot for me because I think we've anybody that before the social media stuff, me and Danny started doing radio with 860 with Sergio in 2006.
Yeah.
Long time we did radio, and we did it on 1040 ESPN, which ended up going 1040 NBC Sports, and you've done it all the way up to about 2 years ago. And then you start taking some time off in the summer and enjoying yourself. But so it's nice to have you back in here. It's like old times again.
Well, I enjoy it.
We got the young gun next to us. We can pick on him now. I'm officially the old guy now until he comes in. Then I feel young. But Danny, with this weather we have, what do you see as far as going on? But beyond the snook, everybody kind of knows the snook's going on. What do you think about the mackerel bite this year? You think it's going to be early?
What I'm surprised is, I've caught a few mackerel in the last couple of weeks, but not a lot. And I would have thought they'd have started moving in heavier than what they actually did. Yes, it would have been early, but we're coming up on March 1st now, and we ought to be into the mackerel. And the ones I've caught have been small, and not caught a lot of them.
Yeah,
so
it don't
I
seem
know.
like it's.
To me, I think it's a correlation with the bait. What I've noticed is, and I think this is already starting to happen. It happened to me the other morning, and I know it happened to another local captain, Captain Kevin Little, because we were trying to get bait on the same market, but the thread fins have showed up.
Yeah.
There's times where you can get in there and get them, and you go, oh, it's nothing but white bait. Well, little be known that they are around, and they're starting to show up. And for me personally, when I start seeing a lot of threadies at those markers, especially on the South Shore markers, that's when I know the mackerel are starting to really move into the bay thick, because they'll follow those bait congregations. And a lot of times, especially the markers right out in front of Little Harbor, the 3 or 4 markers out in there, I'll get them in my net when we're catching bait in the mornings. I'll catch, a 12-inch mackerel or something like that, and kind of indicate to me that things are moving around, and that whole bay fishing type thing is starting to kick off. But I haven't been mackerel fishing. We actually talked about it the other day. We had some guys that needed quite a bit of fish to take home. They had like 50 guys that they were going to do a cookout for, and so mackerel was the targeted species. And then the wind just got a hold of us, and we couldn't make the bay fishing thing happen. So we ended up, doing well on the trout, thank God. But other than that, we really haven't been out doing any mackerel fishing. So I couldn't tell you there,
Well,
but it's always a fun thing.
Yeah,
it's always
funny.
something that's overlooked.
I usually catch the mackerel when I'm trout fishing,
Yeah.
and I just set up and start fishing trout, and the mackerel show up, and especially if I chum.
Mm-hmm.
And when we catch a few, and if the trout bites slow, then I'll chum up the mackerel and
Get them going.
Get them going. But usually I don't chum. When I'm trout fishing, I don't try and chum too much because I don't.
Right.
Mackerel will shut. Mackerel and bluefish will shut.
I was gonna say the mackerel, the bluefish, and even the ladyfish start showing up in the whole mix.
Have you kept bluefish for customers? Because they eat them up north. I always tell them there's a junk fish.
I've kept them.
I've kept them, but
bleed them immediately, and ice them right then.
And they're still not.
Cut the gill plates, let them bleed out, get them on ice as soon as possible, and they're actually not too bad. Now, me personally, I think a Spanish mackerel, tastes better than a bluefish, but from a meat perspective, like looking at the meat when you clean it, it's pretty close. Like it's got a similar texture. The bluefish is a little darker meat than the mackerel actually once you get it all cleaned up, but I've heard that they taste great, and I've had several clients that have taken them home. Not something I've even cleaned several Jack Crevalle. Folks will take those home and smoke them. So, you never know, man.
Yeah, I mean, the mackerel, there's a ton of them out there. They fight good. What I don't like about them, they're very messy. You got to have a system. Have a cooler set up with a D-hooker. They fight real good, and, I mean, you can keep a lot of them for people. This year, for whatever reason, we've got a lot of meat eaters on the boat. And, me personally, we've been catching quite a bit of trout, but I just feel a little guilty because I just don't feel confident that the trout numbers are what we've seen. Although it is looking better. I've seen a lot of trout being caught, so that is a good thing. But mackerel gives us an ease when they move in. Hey, you want to catch some fish? Let's go get a few mackerel. Throw 5 of them in the box. You can go do your snook fishing, go hunt reds, mix it up.
And it's a great, learner fish. It's a great learner fish to learn how to cast a bait, how to freeline a bait, because I do most of my mackerel fishing where I freeline the baits. I let them fish them back in the tide. And so there's a lot going on in mackerel that you can sort of take an angler and go do some mackerel fishing in the morning and then go do some snook fishing for fun in the afternoon. And I feel like if they're a newer angler, that they'll get a better perspective and have a better chance inshore if they've done some mackerel fishing. Even just to learn how to set a hook or to keep the rod bent and, the motions of reeling. You're not having to worry about getting them tangled up. They're not having to worry about casting the mangroves. So from a charter perspective, whether it's to eat a lot of fish, to take some kids fishing, or a novice fisherman, it's a great way to get out there and have some fun.
Yeah, mackerel, they're but man, boy, they're a pain to deal with when you get them the boat. You got to have a D-hooker.
You got to go right.
You just go get them
right there.
Put them right here.
Yeah, Danny, you got listen.
Throw your shirt away when you're done. But
Danny don't even throw his shirt. He don't even bring it home. He gets to the dock and throws it in the trash.
Throw it away.
The old mackerel, Danny mackerel grab. Well, guys, we get back. We're gonna go over some boating safety tips. If we got some questions here, we're gonna read them when we get back. But right now, we gotta take a little break and pay some bills. If you guys are just tuning in, don't forget, we can't share the show enough, and we need your help sharing. So pass the word along, share it to your friends. We got Captain Danny Garino in the studios, Captain Travis, myself, Captain Jason. We're gonna take a little break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, guys. We appreciate you sticking with us. You're watching Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. Myself, Captain Travis Yaeckel, in the studio. Captain Danny Garino, big man Captain Jason Prieto, here live for another about 40 minutes, guys. So you got us. Like I said, we appreciate you joining in, and we're going to do a little trivia stuff, give away some goodies. We also got, I wanted to mention that Tampa Fishing Outfitters is starting they had it last year, if I remember correctly, it was the same sort of platform, but they're having a bass tournament. It's an online catch and release bass tournament. So for the freshwater guys, you can register. You have to register this week in the store. To come up to the store, register for the online tournament. And the fishing actually opens this weekend. That'd be March 3rd. The tournament will run, or you can submit entries until the 23rd. So that's the 3rd to the 23rd of March. We got a bass tournament going on. That's Tampa Fishing Outfitters. Come into the store, sign up for that, get registered, and then your entries will go to TampaFishingOutfitters.com. So if you're interested in doing that, check it out. You can come into the store, call the store. They've got most of the information on that, but it is going to start this Saturday. So go ahead and get signed up if you're interested in it, and start catching some bass, man.
You know, I've caught one bass in my life, maybe two.
Get out of here.
That's it.
Really?
Yeah.
It's cool.
We got into it the other night, man.
So
I mean, I really love bass fishing, and this time of year is when the big girls get on the bed.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
every year there's a week, that first week in April in the area that we fished in a lot is when those fish would get on bed. And I've got a 12, my buddy's got a 14 out of the same. This is going to sound crazy, but literally the same bed. The same spot in the pond, the same exact bed. He got a 12, or I got a 12, he got a 14. So that's coming up, man.
People ask me all the time. I said, why? And I grew up on the salt water.
I spent a number of years over in the middle.
Believe it or not,
Dover, Valrico area, man, and
I fished Lake Assassin.
Really?
Many years ago.
Well, that's probably why you only caught one.
That might be.
Hey, Craig. The old ski lake.
Captain Craig.
But anyway, so yeah, for all you bass guys, man, it's actually at a good time. There's some fat fish probably around getting on bed, especially with the early heat we've had. If spring has sprung in the saltwater, I would imagine that the bass fishing's kicking up too.
Oh, yeah.
So check that out, guys.
We got some trivia. First, I want to thank, again, our giveaway. We got Tampa Fishing Outfitters supplying us with the it's white bait season, and we're going to give away a chum bat. Danny, you needed one of these a couple weeks ago. You had to pay me for one.
Or a beer funnel. Or a
beer.
urinal.
Yeah, I've seen them get used for that before.
No.
Chet,
he drills a hole in the bottom.
Yeah. But also, we're going to be giving
So
away.
don't shotgun beer out of Chet's.
Yeah, don't do anything out of Chet's bat, man. It's gross. But we're going to be giving away a chum bat for a question, and we're also going to do Blue Water gear. These guys are getting on board with our show. We're working out the details. Sponsor me in the Florida Pro. They're doing a lot of good stuff. It's a newer clothing company, Tampa Fishing Outfitters. Hopefully, he's going to work some deal with them and start carrying them in the store. There's a lot of good stuff going on there, and you can actually win one of their shirts free. They're nice, dry fit, comfortable shirts. They've got a whole clothing line. They got this new leggings, which I'm not a woman, so
Yeah, that's right up your
we're
alley.
We're gonna let
That's
Travis.
right up your alley, dude.
Listen, Andrew, if you're watching the show, I think Travis wants to test out the leggings
What is
to
a
see if their
legging?
stretching ability is
Some
good.
guys will do anything for sponsorship. Not this guy.
Anything but that.
You don't want to see me in it, then.
But so, anyways, Blue Water Gear. They're gonna be a new sponsor on their show, and they're gonna be giving us a shirt away tonight. So, trivia question. I'm gonna do one, and then we're gonna take a little bit of a break, and we're gonna get into boating safety, and we're gonna go over a little bit. I don't want to get into too much details, but
We'll spit it out.
go a little bit on the accident, and not a whole lot, because there's not a whole lot that can be said, I don't think. But we're going to try to give some people some tips about boating safety and things you can do on the water beyond fishing to help yourself so you make it to another day, possibly. But so my question, let's see here. Which one do I want? I picked 13 today. A short signal for a ship turning left is...
Dude, are you serious? Straight out of the OUPV
No,
operator handbook?
No, I found this. There's a bunch of different
you
ones.
found that on like the U.S. Coast Guard license
No, I didn't.
training course.
Well, hey, dude, it might help somebody. You got a ship coming at you.
A ship.
Listen, I'm gonna give you the first. It's not the answer, but
you
if
ever
they,
use your horn? Hey, my horn malfunctioned like 2 months after I got my Canyon Bay, and I unplugged it. So
oh,
mine's gonna be like, hey,
Craig,
Get
you
the
don't
hell
count.
out of the way.
Craig, you don't count. Craig, you don't count.
Greg must be studying for the license.
Yeah, he is. He's got to renew his
He
license.
spends a lot of time in the shipping channel.
One honk. Listen, any honks from a ship, get the
Get
hell
out of the way.
okay?
Unless you're Captain Ron.
Yeah. Okay. That's our first trivia. That's for the bat. And then Travis is Mr. Technical Hero pick, or Danny can pick the second one.
Oh my
No,
goodness!
let-
Did we get a
But that-
winner? Well,
we
I don't
haven't-
even. What was the question, Jason?
It was read it right there.
All right.
What's
So
the answer?
the signal for a ship turning to the left, which the left is the what?
Port. I had to think about it.
Oh, I almost got you.
No, I,
Left is the port.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I go, I left.
Right,
I left.
right is starboard. I always remember that.
I
Unless
left.
you're-
I
unless
left
you're-
the port.
Yeah.
I left the port.
Unless
That's all
you're
you. That's all
facing
you
the
remember.
other way.
Well, true. Now, in the tugboat world, they have what they call Z-tugs, which either side of the boat can be the port or the starboard, depending on which way it's operating.
Yep.
So that gets a little confusing, especially when you're working on switch gear and they go, well, the port main's out, and you go, which way you driving?
Yeah.
But anyway, so good deal on that. So the answer to your question, Jason, was 2 short blasts, right? Did we get that? Captain Craig Weaver gets a chum bat.
No, nobody gave the answer. You just gave it.
He just said it right there. 2
I
blasts.
said Craig was not allowed to play.
Oh, well, he says, come on, man.
Oh, my God.
Captain Craig, hey,
No, he
America,
put it
brother.
on- He put it
I
on
got
there.
you right here.
Craig.
Captain Craig Weaver, coming to Tampa Fishing Outfitters. You get yourself a chum bat.
Jimmy Beagle. What's up,
See
Mr.
like that,
Beagle?
baby?
Where's my boy Shamalify? Keep me
All right.
on the water.
So if you're in the bay
Keeping
And
Danny
you
on the
hear-
water, that's even
and
harder
you-
to do.
and you
I
hear a
was just
ship.
there last week.
and you hear a ship sound the horn, 2 blasts, just get out of the way.
If you hear a ship do anything, if you just hear a ship, don't wait for him to blow the horn. Get out of the way.
Especially if you're in the Little Manatee River.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they're. You're pretty safe if you're up there. Those ships aren't making it even close to there. But all right. So while you're going to study,
Well, I'm reading what you got here.
so guys, as we mentioned earlier, we had there was a tragic accident this past week, and I think all boaters and fishermen are a tight knit group, so to speak, and a lot of guys really stepped up, volunteered out there to help in a situation where the people couldn't get out there. It's the Little Manatee River, Danny, is not. It's not navigable by Coast Guard standards.
Right.
There's not channel markers in most of it. You just have to know where you're going, and there's not really deep boat ramps. They didn't like the Alafai River or Gandy, so there was some guys that were in the area that were able to help out, and we mentioned them earlier in the show and commend them guys. I was able to get out there and help, and unfortunately somebody had died from the accident, and the outcome of it is nothing's really good out of it except for other people can learn from an incident like that. What can I do when I'm on the water to be safer? When you're put in an emergency situation, you've got to make a judgment call or a reaction
In an instant.
in an instant,
It
like
has
a
to
reaction.
be second nature.
It can't be like, okay, they told me to do this. Let me think about it for 10 minutes. And sometimes you need to ask yourself in that instant,
What's up, Jesse?
can
Jesse's watching.
I make that? Where at?
Beagle said Jesse's watching.
Oh,
Anyway, sorry. go ahead.
can I make that call, and can I make the right call? Because it can be the difference. These guys were just out fishing. I mean, they wasn't weather wasn't bad. It was a beautiful day.
Mhm.
They wasn't in rough seas. They wasn't taking on water. They were just fishing, and it was just a bad situation that happened. I don't even know if it's anybody's fault. I don't know the details of it, but
It shouldn't have happened.
well, I think a lot of stuff shouldn't happen that happens
Right.
in life. But if you're put in that situation, if you run it over your head a little bit, you're gonna make a better judgment call off a reaction. B, do you have all the equipment and all the stuff to make that call easier? Safety equipment. Is your boat have there's a product here that I want to mention later in the show.
Let me ask you a question before you get too far into this, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but how many people, when they leave the dock, guides, recreational fishermen with guests on the boat, how many of them actually go, the life jackets are in there, the fire extinguishers in
we're
there,
all guilty
the
of
safety
that.
kits
Yeah,
in
I
there?
do it.
I do it. You can
Yeah,
ask my clients
do.
when we're idling out.
I know where they are.
When we're idling out from Little Harbor, I miss it every now and again, but 9 times out of 10, We discuss what we're going to do for the day, how the fishing's been, and where the safety gear is. Because I've had some instances where I've been real close. I mean, heck, look what happened to us last year with, ladies passing out and stuff. So I build on that. Like I carry an EpiPen. Do you have an EpiPen on your boat?
Mm-mm.
Some kid gets bit by a wasp or something. There's a lot of stuff that you don't think about.
Yeah.
My point, and we're all guilty of not thinking about everything. But there is some stuff that it seems like it's pointless to say and talk about. But in that split moment when it happens, the more you're prepared and know what to do, the better off you're going to be. And a lot of times it's the opposite, where you have 30 seconds to react and people do nothing.
Yeah.
So being prepared for that stuff is definitely.
I think the number one rule that you can tell yourself is, in a panic situation, don't panic.
Don't panic.
You have to.
Because if you
stay
panic,
calm.
you're done. Like it's just.
One thing I learned early on. I've been running boats since I was 8 years old. But the thing I learned was, when you make a move, if you've got two boats headed to each other, when you make a move to go either starboard or port, exaggerate that move.
Sure.
So the other guy knows exactly
right.
what
Make
you're
a hard
doing.
turn and then correct it.
Yeah, and make that way they know what you're doing. Don't just go a little bit. And that to me is the number one rule for me.
Hand signals are another one too. If you're that kind of, I mean, I'm going this way, you go that way. It seems like you're being a D-bag, but that little kind of stuff just to make sure that the other guy knows what you're doing is a big deal. I agree with you, man.
I mean, it's unfortunate what happened this last week, but there's a lot of boat traffic right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people in town. There's a lot of people on the water, and we all just have to slow down, figure out where, what's safe.
Ease on around,
what's
man.
Safe running speed.
Yeah, and we're guilty as much as anyone. The one thing about us is that we run it every day, so we're really used to our surroundings if we're in our surroundings. And sometimes that's not good because you lay your guard down a little bit more. Yeah. I can tell you, when I seen what had happened here, me and Jason Thompson both said,
you're a little puckered the next couple.
Well,
you
start
boat,
when you pull in that Ruskin Inlet around the corner, because everybody kind of blows around it because it's not dredged, and you almost have to on low tide. You think 3 times, maybe not twice, because you're always thinking twice, but you think 3 times about coming around that corner. So there's a lot of little things you can do. One big thing is check your safety gear, man. Make sure you have the right stuff. Make sure your flares are up to date, because we use our boats every day.
Fire extinguishers.
I replace my flares every year. They're good for 4 years, 5 years. Every year and a half, I just go buy new ones.
Horn, some kind of signal device, some audible signal device.
But if you don't use your boat every day, you need to check that stuff. Life vest, man. That's like, it sounds dumb, but how many people have you heard get pulled over because they don't have life vests in the
Another
boat?
one that we're talking about, and it sort of leads off of safety, that a lot of people overlook, and a lot of times that's when your boat goes down, is your bilge pumps. That's another one. You guys are yanking your boats out of storage. They've been sitting there for 3 or 4 months. You yank it out. Check the bilge pump. Make sure the bilge pump turns on. Make sure your float switch is working. A lot of times something will get hung up in that float switch. Your bilge pump, especially if you've got it wired to where you're wired to the hot on one of your batteries as a safety thing. If you keep your boat in a place where water gets in it, a lot of guys will wire their bilges to stay on. Well, if that thing gets hung up and never shuts off, you burn a pump up. You don't know anything. You get back on the boat. You go out, and now you got a bilge pump issue. The hoses are another one, too. It's maybe not be the bilge pump, but, a lot of times if I haven't used a boat for several months, you go in there and inspect. Make sure you don't have any cracked lines. Make sure there's nothing twisted or turned. Or, a lot of times that's when it happens, and there is no, explanation for it.
Let me tell you something that's real simple that can save your life, and it's something that falls back on my mechanical background and just me. I pay attention to stuff, as you probably do with your background, that average people don't do. When you get in the boat and your bilge pump pumps some water out, look at the water coming out. If it's got some kind of oil residue, it could be fuel. That is bad news. Bad news.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to always keep an eye on. Keep a basic toolkit in your boat to where if keep a couple. A lot of a prop wrench is good. A lot of boats use, almost every boat has either a 3/4 1.125 or 1.5 inch hose in it. The rubber plugs for 1.5 inch hoses. If you get a hose that cracks in your bilge and it's dumping water and you need to get back, keep a couple of them plugs. You can shove that plug in there just to block it. Duct tape, zip ties. That's the redneck toolkit right there.
There's an orange box in my boat, and it's got an assortment of wrenches. It's got an assortment of zip ties all the way up to like the 36-inch jobbies for when a power pole goes out or something like that. I always carry a couple extra pieces of rope. I always carry butt connectors. I always carry electrical tape, fuses. I've got several fuses on my boat that I use. But knowing all that
just
stuff,
basic stuff.
Yeah, and you know it may not always be a safety thing, but it may be the thing that gets you back before the skeeters get you ate up and waiting on your buddy to come tow you in.
I tell you something else to do, and we got Jimmy Beagle and Jesse, and Jesse's their head mechanic. If you go in there for an annual service, and I know Alify will do this, ask them to charge you a half-hour labor, which is about $50, to visually and put a hand on every clamp and hose in your bilge that they can reach. Just look at your pumps. Check your wire. If you got because a lot of times what happens, you get a green coat of corrosion happening on a butt connector. That even though it's heat shrunk, maybe when they crimped it, they broke the shrinking around it, and that wire. I've had it happen with my boat, and you know, or a lot of times they'll come in with 2 wires in one for the float switch and the bilge to go in line where the float switch works. Well, sometimes that wire will get a little bit of stuff in it. Well, guess what? That bilge pump goes out. It never goes out when you're sitting at the dock or in a safe situation.
No.
One thing I'm going to do on my next boat, they're building it right now, and it's one thing I did like about my Canyon Bay. It's a great idea to have your boat, if you're having one built, ask them to put you a separate bilge pump. One on a manual switch, one on auto switch. If you got one that fails, you got a backup.
I have one on the skiff. I just went through this. I just wired up my panels last night. But what I did was in the skiff, you've got sponsons or the tunnels, right, which they never had access to that. So I got bilge pumps in there, but then I've also got a bilge on my deck, you know, on the actual, you know, your self-bailing, you know, compartment in the back of the boat on the top deck. So I've got an auto there, and then I've got regular bilge pumps with separate float switches. And then I've got HOA or, you know,
do yourself
auto
a favor
switches for that.
And one thing that you have on your Canyon Bay, go to a 1,500 or 2,000 gallon bilge pump if all possible. The 1,100s are smaller cartridges, and they've got a little screen on the base. And what happens is you get grass and stuff in your bilge. Some boats do, and that smaller screen will tend to get clogged easier. And then in turn you'll burn your pump up when you get stuff in the impeller. The bigger 1,500s have a base about that big, and typically it's a stronger pump. I think it's a better made motor in there.
I mean, you know, especially for us, and it goes back to kind of what we started talking about in the beginning of the show, was you start getting bait on the flats. You start getting grass down in the bilge area. I don't care what boat you got. At some point, you're going to have a little hatch or something that's going to get grass down in there, and you're going to clog up a bilge pump if you get a lot of bait on the flats. And what I found, like we talked about, I went to a 1,500 on mine, set it up a little bit different, took a piece of 1/4-inch starboard and lifted that up just a touch. And what that was able to do was all that grass sort of collects at the base of the pump. I can reach down there and grab it with my hand, but I'm getting all the water out, as opposed to all that grass getting stuck on the pump and it clogging up, not getting any water pumping out.
They did that on my Pathfinder, and I thought when I picked the boat up, I said, but I thought the switch would run all the time. It is great. They've got a thin piece, and what it is the hull is V'd, and it sits like this. So actually, this stuff will run through the little plate into the drain, but it doesn't get anything in the pump. It works out great the way they did it. It was pretty well thought out, which is a good idea. Yeah.
I do the same thing, David. Just bump it. Yeah. That's been, I tell you.
Well, Danny, your boat's
line gets
8 years
down there.
old, right? 8 or 9. So you start getting to that point where you've had yours rewired, and we've went through it. And there's constantly something that, you know. I tell you another great idea that I did like about my new boat that I haven't seen on any other boats. They put this little tiny red light above the bilge. So when the
auto kicks on.
When the auto kicks on, that light is on, and it's pretty bright. It's tiny, and it's built into the dash, but you can see. And I thought, that is the simplest deal that you can do but it tells you that your bilge is running.
Well, and on most switches, what he's talking about, guys, if you've got like a Carling switch or a standard rocker switch, what you have to get is a dependent light. So most lights on a switch, right, the LED that turns on, is wired into the contact on the switch internally, right? So if you click the switch up to manual, you get the light, right? Well, a lot of times when you go to auto, okay, if you've got a dependent light that's on the switch, then when you go to auto, it's going to turn on.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the actual pump turned on, right? You're just sending power down to the float switch, right? So if you get they make lamps, or they make switches that have independent lights, which means you feed that back into where when the pump does come on, you get the indicator. So you can do that with a regular switch, and it does make a difference. Because, even though you have it in auto, the light's not on until the pump actually draws power, which is coming from the pump side.
These are actually toggle switches, though. Because the lights on the switches, if it's during the day, it's hard to see. This thing it might be LED. It's tiny.
I did them on mine.
But it's actually like a separate light. You got the toggle switch, and it's facing at you. It was good. One of the things I really did like about it, because how many times, even us, you've been out there and grass gets on your bilge's been running for 2 hours down there with no water, and then that's how you end up burning
there was a comment here. David Stella put, toggle your bilge pump during the trip just to make sure the float switch didn't kick off or you got an issue with it. And that's a good point. And on the boat that I'm building, I've got a main control arrangement down on the bottom, right? Because that's where I'll be most of the time. So I've got my bilge pumps, my live well pumps, my courtesy lights, my live well lights. All that stuff is on a switch panel that's on the bottom. And so when I went to do the top, I've got my nav lights, anchor light up there, and I've got my driving light, a light. And I said, well, what am I going to do? Is there anything else I need up there? And I thought about it, and I went, I said, I'm going to go ahead and put a bilge pump switch up, the manual bilge pump switch, even though I have an HOA or a manual off auto down on the bottom, so that if I'm running, I can just bump those to see if anything comes out the back while I'm running, because I know that obviously when the boat gets on a plane, you may have water that sits, depending on what kind of boat you have, you may have water that's sitting in the front of your boat, and you don't get it until you get on a plane and kind of push that water to the back of the boat. So I did that on my boat too, just for that reason, so that I could run and bump those switches up there just to see if I had some water, just because I'm a freak when it comes to that stuff. But
well, guys, we're going to take a little break. Danny, hold on, we got to take this break. We're going to take a little break. We get back, I'm going to give you guys a new product that I found I don't know a ton about, but it's supposed to be pretty good, and actually the FWC pulled a buddy of mine's over and recommended it. So we're going to cover that on the backside of the break. You listen to Tampa Fishing Outfitters Fishing Report. We'll be right back. And welcome back to another great episode. Tampa Fishing Outfitters Fishing Report. Danny, you know how many times I've said radio?
It's funny. I've got a friend.
Oh, give us an all right, Danny.
I've got a friend that does the LuLaRoe stuff. Have you seen that? It's like the leggings. So they sell the leggings online. And it's mainly an online thing, and they're doing a lot of the Facebook Live, and the women go on there and buy the things. Well, a good friend of mine, his wife, does it. So I was over at their house one day, and she's got her whole thing set up in the living room. She's got this note card on the thing, and it's all the words not to say. It's like beautiful, luxurious. We need that.
Yeah, we definitely need that.
But anyway, sorry, go ahead, man.
Well, our special guest, Captain Danny, in the house, going old school. What do you think about all this techie stuff we got going on here? It's pretty cool. Oh, Shorty did a pretty good job on it over here. That light makes you a little hot, but
I get a suntan every time I come in.
Yeah. It's like a tanning bed. Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
That was like the what do we call that, penalty box?
What was the deal for that? It was
I don't
it was
know.
painful.
Yeah, they were trying to freeze us out for 5 years.
It was
They
cold.
finally got rid of us.
Uh,
Danny.
got to keep it on, Danny.
Oh, I didn't know I turned it on.
Dead.
Batteries.
Oh.
Go
Anyway,
ahead. Go ahead. Go for it.
One thing I've been noticing is the number of kayaks we have out there,
Yes.
and it's scary out there with all the boat traffic, and the kayak with a low profile, you can't hardly see them sometimes.
Yeah, it is, Danny, and that's another thing too. It's funny you bring that up, guys. I listen. I think kayaking's great. I think it's a great option. I think the paddle boards are great. And I always am extra cautious on the flats because we do run the flats at times, and we are in and out of places, and occasionally we run across a place where we run across them. But we have to be extra careful. But I think there's responsibility goes both ways.
Oh yeah.
And a good example, there was some people. I mean, we're talking Cockroach Bay, the main channel that runs in. There's 15 kayakers just hanging out in the middle of the canal. I'm talking not by the ramp, like they're out of ways.
Yeah.
And I came out and I slowed down and I'm idling. I mean, they're from me to you, Danny, and I'm going through my tower. I finally said, look, guys, I said, I ain't trying to be mean, but you guys shouldn't be here. Like, this is not the place to hang out in a kayak. I know it's shallow, but there's boats running through here all the time. Like, it's a high-risk area. You can put the blame on me as the boater. You can put the blame on the kayak. It really don't matter. Does it matter whose fault it is? Just there's certain areas that I think you have to be careful. I think kayaking, I think there's experienced guys. I think there's inexperienced guys. I think there's a lot of guys going extreme on kayaks, and I'm not going to deter them from that because some people maybe have the experience and the confidence to do that. Other people might be trying it that shouldn't, and I think that's just going to be on the people doing it. But you're absolutely right. The kayak, it's.
I mean, I kayak. I've got 4 kayaks myself, and I kayak right from the house. What I don't do, and what I see some kayakers do, whether inexperienced or they just don't know, is they'll get on a blind corner.
Right.
And why take the chance? There's a guy coming around with a boat. He may not know there's somebody there, and he may be doing it wrong. But you know what? If he does it wrong and you get run over, well, it's his fault. Yeah, well, you're hurt, but it was the other guy's fault. Do the common sense thing, and stay visible, stay off of blind corners, things of this nature. Yes, the guy's not supposed to go around a point on plane, but don't take the chance that some idiot will do that.
I tell you, you're sitting here telling me this, and I got something in my head. I'm thinking, if you're in a kayak, and I've only kayaked once, but I'm just thinking, if I'm in a kayak, I'm low profile.
Pura vida. That's for Phil. He's from Costa Rica.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I took Phil fishing last month. He's awesome. He watches the show and follows
Rooster
us
fish
on
ought to be
Facebook.
going gnarly right now, man.
But anyways, I would have an air horn with me because you come around a corner and maybe the guys on plane coming right at you don't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You blow one of them dang air horns, you gonna get his attention. And it's something like the little stuff like that. I mean, you just really have to think about. Nobody wants to think about, well, what if I get hit out here? What if I'm in a bad situation? But I think you kind of need to take precautions because there's a lot of different the paddle boarders. You got boat sales right now. I just had to help haul boats for Family Boat. They can't get boats in fast enough. They're selling like hotcakes, and they're just one dealer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people buying boats. There's a lot of people with inexperience buying boats.
Well, it's the one thing, I sort of compare it to like that whole Polaris Ranger ATV market where you can go out, you can spend $10,000-$12,000, get on this machine, run 80 miles an hour, and go wherever you want to go. It's a similar, comparison to talk about the boat stuff because you can go down right now if you got the money and buy a boat, turn around and put it on the water, and there's no training, there's no certification, there's nothing that you need legally to jump on a boat, mash the throttle, and let her eat. Like, there is nothing, And so I think that just that whole in itself, people don't necessarily. I think the safety feature sometimes gets downlooked because you would think, oh, I need a license for this, or I need this, or I need that. It must be this easy, just free range, go and do what you want to do.
It's definitely not.
And
you ain't got brakes. It's
no,
worse than a car.
I know that, but what
Yeah,
I'm saying
I know what
is,
you're saying.
is somebody that goes to purchase something like that, you know, you don't necessarily take it in as that big of a risk when the day you launch your boat and you leave. For us, I don't necessarily worry about myself, but I'm always keeping an eye out around me, because you never know who's running around out around you, and that's how a lot of this stuff ends up happening. But
the Coast Guard Auxiliary does a great job. They've got classes. You
right,
can go to these
I agree.
classes. I went to them once. I mean, I wanted to see what it was, and this was 8-10 years ago. And you know what? They're pretty good.
Stuff you wouldn't think about.
Yeah, it's a lot of common sense is what they come up with. You know, when we went to our captain's school,
Common sense will save your life.
We went to captain's school. You know,
we learned a bunch of crap we're never going to use.
Yeah, and I'm not going to run a 100-ton ship out of the channel. I'm just not going to. You know, whether they got flags on them and lights on them, I have no clue. I know what they mean, but when I went,
I'm in the wrong area.
Yeah, when I went to the Coast Guard Auxiliary and took that class, it was one afternoon, one Saturday, one day.
Stuff you forget.
Yeah, it was really good.
Well, it's
And
funny
I
you say
recommend
that, Danny. After the incident happened Friday, and I was out there along with a couple other captains, like, you know, we kind of got a group text. And I want to, it's funny, there's a lot of guys, a lot of bicker in our business, but when push comes to shove, man, we got a small niche group, and the guys come together and they help each other. And I was...
I was out catching bait that morning.
Yeah, only person I didn't see was Travis, but he don't ever answer his phone.
I was out. I was out catching bait, man.
Travis's emergency beacon when I went offshore. So my life was in the hands of Travis answering his phone, possibly. And
no, I wouldn't answer. If that thing would have went off, I'd have said, "No, I'm
really
offshore.
worried.
Come get
I
me."
was like, if there's one person that ain't gonna answer his phone,
as quick as you can, come get me.
I had talked to my wife that night, and I got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter. My 5-year-old's a little young. And I told my 10-year-old, I said, you know, I've showed you how to run the boat, and she knows how to put it in gear, and she's idled and went on playing a little bit. But I said, it's time. I was like, I'm going to take the class with you. I want to take her, and I'm going to pick a weekend. I'm going to make time. I'll make my wife go too, and we're going to take the basic class, because we go out in the boat all the time now, living on a canal to the beach and all that. What happens if I get hurt, or just say something happens where I pass out? Somebody in that boat needs to know how to run it confident to get me back, and right now there's nobody my wife might be able to figure it out, but she's probably the worst person in the panic situation when it comes to that stuff. So the more knowledge that I get, it's like, put your ego at the door, because I know how to do it, but I think that falls on parents a lot. Guys, if you take your kids out, take the time, and I think we're all guilty of it in this fast-paced world we live in. I think more in Danny's age of growing up, they did more hands-on, and you know, you spend a little more time getting your kids trained. Now
that was the only way.
Yeah, now
that
everything's fast-paced and is different. It's us. I think it's our responsibility as parents to teach our kids the basics and teach them how to survive, whether it's a boat or anything like that. So leave the egos out the door and get your kids out there in one of these classes and really make it happen. Because I'm going to take it. I mean, I fish for a living, so do you. I'm going to have my daughter. I'm going to go with her. And I want her to do the class and take the class with her.
There's another one. I know we're just about out of time, Jason, but to kind of stem off of what you're talking about, it made me think of something else. And we've talked about kayaks being in areas that they shouldn't be in. We've talked about boaters doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And one thing that, and I think some guys do it and some guys don't, but as guides and as professionals, people look up to us to some level on the water. And, you know, posting a picture of some guy doing something wrong, yelling at a guy that doesn't quite know what he's doing. You know, I've always sort of prided myself on taking the time to at least find out what's going on. Like, perfect example, there was two kayakers between Joe's Island and Bishop's Harbor one day, and I came out of Joe's Island, and plenty of water, and I was running the inside there to go to Bishop's Harbor. And
Danny, you remember that?
Two kayakers were sitting there.
I spun a prop.
Well, they start throwing arms up, and you know there's only a minimal area that you can't go through there. Well, I laid it down. Port bracket came up, and I laid it down just nice and easy, and I idled over there to him. And the guy was sort of mad at me, and I said, listen, I'm not trying to interfere with y'all's fishing. I said, there's a really narrow area that I can get through here. I said, I apologize that it looked like I was going to blow you guys up. I said, I slowed down because I knew where you guys were at, where I was coming through Well, the guy goes, man, I said, I appreciate that. He says, I had no idea that boats could even run through here. He said, I'll make sure to kind of ease on through here next time and go fish around the corner. He said, we were just out paddling around.
Well,
so that instance right there where I could have been the D-bag and blew by and flicked him off and tarnished some part of my name just by stopping, and it was 2 birds in 1 stone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So take the extra time. If you do know something and you see somebody doing something wrong, be the bigger guy and say, hey, man, this is the way you should be doing it. It's going to save you in the long run. So
well,
just throw that out there, man.
That exact same
People do
spot,
stuff the opposite way most of the time than they should.
Well, and we got to do 2 quick trivia questions here. But that exact same spot, and Danny, you had to. One time I've ever spun a prop, I went to go make that run, and it was kind of in between tide, and you hit that real shallow spot. But everybody runs it to get over there, and the bar was pretty shallow. Well, as I come around the corner, and I've already committed, a kayaker comes from the bar, and a kayaker comes from land, and they're going like this, and I'm running like this. And I got to a point where I said, I could cut around them safely without hurting them, but I would have blew them up. And I knew it was just, I ended up hitting a donut. Well, there's a sunken skeleton of a boat close to the shore. I smoked the skeleton of that boat and spun my prop. And long story short, I called Danny to come out there and get me and bring my customers in and drag me in. And my customer said you should have blew by him, but that was besides
right.
the point.
And most of the time the customer's like, yeah, man, screw that guy.
But
but
just, I didn't feel right about it, even though I don't think I was in the wrong at all. I mean, that is a common area that you run.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I was wrong at all. It was a situation where I either blow by him or I try to do a U-turn. Well, when I did the U-turn, I hit the skeleton of the boat.
Yeah.
But
when you run a boat a long time, people become complacent.
Yep.
And you've got to pay attention with all of the traffic on there now.
Especially this time of year.
This time of year.
2 months ago,
Kayaks,
it was a totally different deal.
It's not just kayaks, it's kayakers and jet skis and whatever. And there's just a lot of traffic there. Just be conscious of what's going on.
I agree, Nick. I agree, man. I mean, if I could get away with that, honestly, if the fishing wasn't as good as it has been, I'd be on the outside of the sandbar 24/7, man. I'll be honest with you. But unfortunately, it's just part of the game, which I know you know. It's just a matter of all of us getting along and everybody keeping an eye out for the next guy around the corner, man. Some of this stuff, like it shouldn't happen. But it does.
It doesn't matter whose fault it is.
No, it doesn't.
Because the end result is somebody gets hurt.
Somebody gets hurt.
And then it's just a mess. And I also want to commend the Sheriff's Department, firefighters for Friday, the paramedics, these guys, man, these guys were in the water. I mean, the whole 9 yards. They do that every day for people that they don't even know. And I I respect them anyways.
Beagle, whole show, man. It's a whole show.
Yeah.
Real quick, and I know we got to go, but this is something that came up, and this happens all the time. But guys, right inside of Simmons Park is the Hillsborough County Marine Safety Office, and they manage all of the no wake, idle, manatee zone signs.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
really?
That's their responsibility. Yeah, and so if you see a sign that's bent over or somebody hit, or that's out of, not working right, that's another big one, man, that it just happened to us in Little Harbor where a pole went down, and I spent 2 days trying to get this pole out of the water because we kept dragging up and it'd float back. But a phone call to them would have solved it if it wouldn't have been where it was at. Little Harbor actually manages that marina. I don't know if you knew that, but Little Harbor runs the marina. But if you see signs, channel markers, stuff like that, a missing sign, something that's not lit up, it doesn't have a reflector on it, those are the guys you need to call, and they'll get somebody out ASAP. They got a little pontoon boat, and they'll go fix that stuff.
Don't call the Coast Guard.
Don't call the Coast Guard.
I called the Coast Guard, and they were acting like I was bothering them.
Yeah, no, don't call the Coast Guard.
Charter, I'm like, look, man, it was one of the...
It's sort of like federal, state water type things.
I know, but still, I was on a charter, and it was one of the ship buoys.
Oh, the big beacons.
And it was up by Simmons Park. And I was like, I called and said, look, man, this thing's, I don't know where. He goes, well.
That one would be a main navigation aid. That should be the Coast Guard. The big buoys.
They were like, well, you need to call this. And I said, look, I ain't calling nobody from this point. I'm calling you. You handle it.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
I like Nick's last sentence.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth to that statement.
My pet peeve.
There's a lot of truth to that statement,
Life
man.
outside the sandbar is the
Yeah,
only answer.
I agree with you to a certain extent. There needs to be some lanes, and it's just not going to happen on our shoreline. That's a whole
That's
nother
a whole
show.
nother show. That's
Don't
a
even
whole
get
nother
me
show,
on that
man.
deal. But
a whole
I'll be
nother
happy
show.
to come.
But
the manatees
that
can't
show.
read either because I've hit a few
I know.
outside the signs.
Dave knows about what I'm talking about. Hillsborough County. But yeah, anyway, so that inside the park there, guys, right inside Simmons Park is the Hillsborough County Marine Safety Officer. And you can look it up online, or you can look up their phone number, but that's the guys you call if you see a channel marker or a slow speed sign or something like that that's missing or not lit up or whatever.
We're going to
that's
have
who you
to
call.
push the Blue Water Gear shirt on next week. Ran out of time. Real quick, I want to do one more thing before we go here, Travis.
Go for it.
I ran across, thanks to my buddy Jeff, in the FWC, I'm pretty sure, one of the officers that pulled his buddy over recommended it. It is let me see, I wrote it down here. It's at weemspath.com. It's an SOS distress flare that is lifetime. It's an LED light. Lifetime. You don't have to change it out. It's like $100. But how many times you went and spent $30 on flares when they?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look into it because that's pretty cool. Luckily I've never had to set a flare off, but the flares go bad, and it'd be one less worry. I would check it on an annual basis to make sure it's working. But that's one less thing you got to worry about.
Sure.
Did I check my flares? So it's Weems
No restriction on shipping either.
What's that?
No restriction on shipping.
Oh.
You can't ship the flare.
Weemspath.com. Check it out. Like I said, I'm pretty sure FWC recommended it to him when they pulled his buddy over. So good information. I think it was a great show. Guys, I hope we educated you guys. If we gave you one tip that bettered yourself in emergency situations, great. Hopefully we gave you a few tips to catch some fish. And let's thank Captain Danny for taking the time to come do a show with us again.
Anytime, just ask.
You're always invited.
Always. Yes, sir.
You're always invited. Guys, it's been a great show. Next Wednesday, same time, same place. We'll be right back.
We won't be right back.
We're
be
gone.
Back. But
we'll
guys,
be right
hey, listen,
back next week.
We're out of here for tonight. If you guys want to do a fishing charter, you can give us a call. My cell phone number is 813-830-3474 or www.fishbyinstinct.com. Jason?
SteadyActionFishingCharters.com, 813-727-9890. And our guest for the night.
And he'll knock the dust off the rods for you.
I'll actually crank up the boat. 813-956-2010.
All right, guys. It's been a good show. We'll see you same time, same place next week. We're out.